Yo, 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 what's going on? This is the NOC, the Nerds of Color, and we are back with another NOC interview. I have some friends joining me today, as well as our special guest, Mr. Perry Young, because it's Perry Young Mania right now over here at the Nerds of Color. Last week, my buddy Keith Chow, you know Keith, dropped an amazing interview. It actually stole my thunder today as I record this because I had so many questions, but he knocked it out of the ballpark with Perry on Southern Fried Asians. So check out Southern Fried Asians, part of the Hard Knock Media family here at the Nerds of Color. A great interview. Perry and Keith talk about their very similar paths of growing up as Southern Fried Asians, or as Perry stated, which is a new term for me. I've never heard this one, a yellowneck. I love that term now. So I may use that one, but I might be careful with it because I don't want to get punched in the face. So that was hilarious, but it's a great interview. Shout out to Keith. Great interview. Southern Fried Asians. Check out the new episode with Perry Young. And now stand by for my conversation with Perry as we go into more of his upcoming projects and everything else. It's the stuff that Keith didn't ask. So that's what I'm going to do. But joining me right now over from the Nerds, we're New Release Wednesday, where nerds rule the world. My buddy over at the NRW, I have Rob, the movie guy. What's up, Rob?
It's all good, man. What's going on with you?
Hey, great to have you on here, joining me over here at the NOC, man. As we talk to Perry Young. As you know, you and I, along with Francis, and he may be joining us as well. We recently did our Warrior Season 2 review that's on the channel, and we as well did the Season 1. And we're so hopeful for Season 3. We're really going to push that. We need that to happen because we need, for me as an Asian, I want that representation popping off and just the history that's involved with that. And, you know, we love Bruce Lee, so we need that to happen. But yo, Rob, we got Father Jun, man. What's up with that? I know you're excited.
You know what? I was excited just to be invited here, to be completely honest. I was very, very interested in listening to his stories. And I actually went out of my way to hear what he had to say with his history and whatnot. And it's very fascinating stuff. So I'm really intrigued to see what he's going to be saying here with us, because I'm very excited to hear his stories on his career and whatnot. So really, really happy to be here.
All right, man. I'm really happy you're here with me because I know you did a lot of research on this. So let's bring him in. Now we have Mr. Perry Young. Welcome.
Thank you guys for having me. What a great intro. Thank you. Such a pleasure to be on NOC.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes. Welcome, Perry. Again, thank you for your time, man. Because you're just blown up. You're all over the place. I'm sure you're seeing this. Everybody wants Warrior Season 3. I want Warrior Season 3. Are you? Is it like overwhelming? How is it that, real quick, before we get into some other projects? Let's get the elephant out the room right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the elephant is screaming. Looking at our culture, what's happening in our country right now, you see it in Warrior. So when people see it, they want the representation because we are showing that there are strong Asian figures out there that were combating violence in the past. And we've been doing it for the last even 50 years, but the media is sort of, puts a muzzle on us. We're not silent Asians, but we just don't get to be amplified. That's why I appreciate so much the work that you are doing to give us a voice right now, because Asian Americans want that voice in this time where we are getting attacked in this pandemic. So, Warrior is showing that history repeats itself, and fans want to see more strong figures to sort of combat, the absence of Asians in the media, which leads to this sort of violence that we're seeing right now. So yes, we want it. The fans are screaming. There's a lot of different movements asking Warner Media to renew the show.
Yes, and we over here at the Nerds of Color, as well as the NRW, really want that to happen. So thank you for your time and for what your work on that and that representation means so much. Asian to Asian over here. Like I can't thank you enough for that. And before we get going, we actually have one of our other guests real quick. I want to bring him in. One of my co-hosts over at the NRW, Francis Serrano. I'm going to let him in right now to join the conversation. He was another one of our reviewers when we were discussing Warrior. That's a big fan of you as well. And he's a martial arts instructor teaching Filipino martial arts. He runs FMAschool.com, and I think he's popping in. Here he is. Francis, welcome to the team. Say hello to Mr. Perry Young.
Hello, Mr. Perry Young. How's it going? Huge fan of yours. Huge fan,
It's going well. Thank you.
I'm going to meet Father Jun. This is so awesome. Thank you for meeting with us. I truly appreciate it, sir.
It's a pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
So let's talk about some of the newest projects you have coming out. One film that I really am looking forward to checking out is called A Father's Son. Can you tell us a little bit about that project and how you got involved with that at the outset?
Yes, A Father's Son is a really cool project based on the writings of Henry Chang. He's got a series of novels called Detective You in Chinatown, and it's sort of like a film noir style. It's a very stylish novel about Chinatown in the 90s, and it's gangs and just characters. It's just really gritty, and we get to see it from the aspects of an internal guy, somebody in Chinatown and a detective. So Patrick Chen, the director, wanted to, this was going to be a great series, but he wanted to make a little short film so he could pitch it as a series. And Patrick got a couple of guys together who happened to just know everyone in Chinatown, and word got out, and we just all wanted to be a part of it because it's such a special story, about a cop torn between two cultures of being sort of like, the second generation ABC, we call American born Chinese. And then his immigrants, his immigrant father, who is like really pro-Chinese, and you don't want to, you're becoming whitewashed, don't you know that, Yeah. And he's like, but that's where we're headed. That's where everyone's headed in America. We're all becoming whitewashed, And it's like, that's not necessarily the great thing. So there's some great themes in this show. And, we got Ronnie Chang, from the Daily Show. We got Tai Ma in it, we got me, we got just, it's just fun. And I get to play, I get to use Cantonese in Chinatown. So it's a privilege to be able to use my first language in a film. We're so, again, our stories in Hollywood are so rarely told with a wide dynamic, real range of who we are as people. So to be able to use that part of myself, some part that, America rarely recognizes, it's a gift. And so, I'm really excited about this.
Oh yeah, I when I saw the breakdown and who was involved with this, I'm like, okay, when can I see this? Where can I see this? So you put out this short film right now, and as you were saying, you're trying. I would assume, well, you did say that they're kind of going to shop it around a bit. Do we know where we can catch it at all at the moment? Is it traveling at some of these festivals coming up, or are they just they filmed it and they're shopping it around to get the rest of the series funded?
Yeah, Patrick is just putting the finishing post-production touches on it, the color correction, the sound and all that. Right. And he's going to enter it into a film festival. Okay. So once you get it into the film festivals, then it's basically where you shop the film. And then it'll be sold and distributed, hopefully, and it'll be streamed for sure. You'll be able to see it on a lot of different streaming platforms. Okay. And then the idea is, someone like Netflix or Hulu will buy it and create a series on the novels.
All right. So you hear that, Netflix series, we need another marathon kind of stuff. So I'm really excited about it. So.
We need to get the promotion to make this happen. It looks amazing. I can't wait to have that happen. So another project, which is one of the main reasons I wanted to hit you up, because when I saw the breakdown on this as well, and your post on Facebook about it, I was like, okay, another project I need to see with you, because I love me some Father Jun, and I've just been diving into the rest of your cinematography that you've done, your work. Snakehead. There's limited information. I actually hit up Keith on my way home today. I was like, what can you tell me about Snakehead? And he was like, yeah, they had a Kickstarter campaign. It's kind of been in the works for a while. And then you got involved with it. What can we talk on that isn't out there that you're able to talk on, Perry? Because there's no trailers. There's not a lot out there yet for us to dive into and dissect to really get into.
Yeah, right. When I Googled Snakehead, a lot of other things popped up. So, am I supposed to send this right?
I don't want to touch that one. You know what? I'm just gonna. Snakehead is another film about Chinatown, and I think we need more. We need to really see. We need to see Chinatown from all these different eyes, right? Because it's normally told from Hollywood. So we get this one view of the exotic Chinatown, the one that the tourists see, or the one that they want to sell to these tour groups that come. But, to get it from the inside, which is what this story is about. Basically, it's a story about a woman that's was smuggled into Chinatown. It's based on a true story of the Golden Venture. That was a ship that smuggled in Chinese immigrants by snakeheads, and this was around 1996. So that ship crashed in Queens somewhere, and a lot of the immigrants jumped ship, and some were killed, and then the ones that were sort of rescued and caught were put into, I call them concentration camps still. I mean, they're still in prison. These immigrants are still in jail right now. Yeah. So this is a look at that story, but there's this one woman that got away. So it's a story of empowerment of the woman called Sister C, played by the beautiful Shuya Chang. And there's another strong matriarch character named Dai Ma, which is Big Mother, and that's played by Jade Wu from the, what's that, Black Panther? Not Black Panther, it was a Luke Cage series on Netflix. She plays Genghis Khani from the Genghis Khani restaurant.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
that.
she's
Okay.
and then we have Sung Kang from the Fast and Furious franchise, who plays Han, right? So we have all these characters that she meets in Chinatown, who are these real people, and I'm one of the seedier, nefarious characters. I don't know how I got cast that way.
What?
But I helped traffic these women, and eventually these women kick my ass. Oh wait, I'm giving away too much.
Yeah.
So it's like it's an empowerment for these women to find their way through the underworld of Chinatown. But we really get to see all these other characters, these young people, this African American immigrant, these people she befriends, and so it's really a beautiful story. It's great, and the director took 10 years to make this. Evan Jackson Leong moved from San Francisco to live in New York City's Chinatown to catch the vibe and to walk the streets. He walked the streets every day, deciding where he was going to shoot these, right?
Wow.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. That's
amazing. That's dedication. That's absolutely dedication.
Serious dedication. I mean, he was writing the script as he was looking at the locations, deciding where he was going to shoot things. So he was really absorbing Chinatown. I mean, he knew Chinatown anyway. He was born in San Francisco's Chinatown. But this story, just the real story of the Golden Venture, took place in New York City's Chinatown. So he wanted to have that, wanted it to be authentic.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a labor of love, and Evan, his roots are in Asian American stories. He directed Insanity, the documentary, which
that was a good one.
Yeah, and so he had help from Justin Lin to produce it. Justin Lin of Fast and Furious and A Better Luck Tomorrow, and who's actually the producer of Warror.
Warror, yeah.
So Justin is just making things happen, and I'm so proud and humbled to be part of all of that.
Awesome. Well, we are definitely looking forward to that. Rob has already told me that that's on the list of his upcoming reviews. Rob is one of our main reviewers on the channel, as well as with Francis. But Rob's always getting his slate ready of films to review. So we can't wait to have that done and on the channel. So yeah, dying for that. So I'm going to actually pass it to Rob because he actually has a slate of questions in preparation for this interview. Since Keith, again, took my thunder away from me doing such an amazing interview with you on Southern Fried Asians. So please go check that out on our channel, Southern Fried Asians with Perry Young, and just his amazing story from the yellow. Oh, actually, before I toss it to Rob, the yellow neck that I kind of brought up in our intro. Where did that's new to me.
That was new to me too.
Yeah.
It's I don't know if it's commonly used, but I call my brother that because he's more Southern than I was. He's sort of assimilated into the Southern Texas culture more than I did. Maybe it's just because he made friends quicker. But I mean, right away he started sounding like he was from the South, and every time he talked, I was like, dude, you're sounding like you have a redneck, but you're not. You're like a yellow neck. It's what? Shoot me now, And I mean, it took years, and I mean years for him to shake that. Even when we moved back to Oakland, California. It took me a couple of years to shake my Southern accent,
Yeah.
But my brother now, 30 years later, he still has a Southern accent.
But once in a while, your twang comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He'll be in Chinatown, you know, and he'll be ordering dim sum in the Southern twang, you know.
Right. Oh, that'd be awesome. All of a sudden, everyone's like, "What? Where did we go?" Well, all of a sudden, we're in the South. So that's amazing.
Exactly. So I call him Yellowneck, and I might have made it up. I don't know if I did or not.
I love it.
I've never heard it. So
you should copyright it.
Yeah, I grew up I grew up all over being a military kid, and but I have a lot of friends, and my family lives in my parents live in South Carolina, and so yeah, I actually am going to be doing a Southern Fried episode myself with Keith. So
cool.
Yeah, I think the next time I visit some of my South Carolina friends, they're very much Yellownecks. And so I think I'm going to now use that term. But yeah, let me throw it over to Rob, the movie guy, who has dug into some of your past work and credentials. And he has a list of questions that made me feel like I'm not that great of an interviewer.
Yeah, I know.
Knocking it out of the park. Our reviewer is killing me as an interviewer. So go ahead, Rob.
Well, thank you for that, but I hope that was not the case. Like, that was not the intention when I sent you out the notes. But well, it's true. I looked into a lot of your work and a lot of your history with your background, of course, and there's so much that I want to ask. But I'm going to start off with the very first thing that came to mind for me, which was you have a lot of knowledge with Chinese American history, and given that you've been able to travel around, especially with you have a YouTube channel. I don't know if anyone else knows out there, but you have a YouTube channel, Young Flutes, which I think is fantastic. But one of the videos that I came across, which I found so fascinating, was with you had interviewed a lot of the South African Chinese immigrants that have been there for generations, and I was completely unaware of that. And I found that fascinating because you were talking to them and getting their background, how the history was like for Chinese South Africans during the apartheid and so on and so forth. And there's a lot deeper history that's involved with that. And then it led me to learn more about other parts of United States history, one of which is in the South. I guess my question was that with your knowledge on that and having to travel around the world and being part of this production with Warror, because you mentioned one interview that you signed up for the part for Father. Oh, sorry, you were auditioning for the part of Father Jun, but you had no idea how to approach it at first because the man was supposed to be in his 60s, 70s, white hair, and you clearly were not that. But you understood the background and you said, "I get this guy. This is going to be for me." So with that being said, where did that actually start for you personally, for you to really dig into the history of Chinese Americans, but just Chinese history in general? Because with what you've been able to carry and actually infuse, and of course you've been doing one film that I happened to see recently with you, the Jade Pendant, which you're in the film very little, but I love the story that was told in that movie. But I wanted to know where that all started for you, because I think it's very integral with what you're able to contribute, well, not just because it's a good film, but you're actually able to contribute a authenticity behind it as well. So it's a long question, but I hope I got to the point for you.
Wow. No, that's a really great question. So, growing up as a Chinese American, I didn't have my grandmothers, right? I had my grandfathers, but I always wondered, why didn't I have any grandmothers here? And then, of course, you have to really seek and investigate that. It's not given to you. Our histories as people of color is not given to you freely. You have to really investigate, research, and find out your true history. And even then, it's difficult because it is so deeply hidden. And so by the time I got to high school, I started to learn about the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, and that was the first and only law that was directed at a racial group of people to prevent them from coming into the country. We heard about the Muslim ban and things like that, but those are just bans. They're not laws. Like the 1882 law was prohibited Chinese and then Japanese from coming into the country. Eventually, they let a little flow in because they needed that cheap labor, but they did not let the women in. So the law specifically started to say no women were allowed unless you were the wife of a merchant, and every woman that came up were questioned intensely in a way that they were accused of being prostitutes right away. So even if you were a legitimate immigrant, you had to prove you weren't a prostitute. So that was dehumanizing to all the women, and women just started to say, I'm not going to try it. So that law was basically trying to say, or saying specifically to Chinese, we don't want you in this country. After we exploited your labor, you're either going to die here alone or you can go back home. And, you know, as I started to learn that, it was like, this is the country I live in. This is the country I was born in. I'm 4th generation Chinese, but my fathers had to go back, have you know, a relationship, have kids, wait till those kids got older, and then, you know, go back and bring them over. That's the story of many Chinese men in America. They had to go back and bring their sons because they couldn't bring their daughters. And that's why in Warror, you see only men, right? When Assam lands in Warror and says, why are there all women? I mean, why are there all men? Where's the women? He should have said, because women weren't allowed in this country. But so knowing that, I already knew that I needed to learn more about my Chinese history in order to know what this country really is about, you know? And so when I went to college, I minored in Asian American studies, and that's when it really started to sink in, because I started to learn about laws, how laws were enacted in this country and how our lives are guided by laws. And you start to learn about, like, you know, that's why I have so much respect for the African American community, you know, and I'm really heartened to see all the Asians for Black Lives Matter, you know, marches after George Floyd's murder, because Blacks have opened up the road for Asians to do things, because we were all people of color. We were all segregated. We didn't have the same rights. You know, we were not the model minority back then. You know, we were as black as black people. Basically, we couldn't go to white schools. We couldn't drink from white water fountains. We couldn't move into white neighborhoods. We couldn't vote, and we couldn't testify against a white man. So we were everything Black people was. But, you know, in the civil rights marches, we found out that they came up with a method to say, you know, if we open this up a little bit to people of color, we can say, we don't need to make things so equal in laws, because it already is. You know, look at the model minority. Look at these Asians. They're doing it. Why can't you do it? So basically, what the model minority myth was created as a wedge to divide people of color and to say that, you know, we don't need to loosen up our racist laws, because you just have to work as hard as the Asians. And so that created this big, you know, tension and rife between the communities that, you know, we can see the results of today, which we need to address more clearly today. So knowing my history, I brought that into all my work as an artist, because before I was an actor, I was a painter. And finally, you know, knowing my history, I can't paint white supremacist educated work. You know, if you look at my art, it basically says I'm a white guy. So I had to deconstruct my work and think about bringing Asian ideology as an artist. So to let my work speak like, oh, this person is using different cultures. He's not just a white guy, you know? So I start to think outside the box. I'm no longer thinking like, you know, a Western educated, you know, Eurocentric thinker. You know, I have to bring in like Taoism and Buddhism, you know, and like adopt my Asian culture. And so as I started to move into performance and seeing the roles out there that are so limited in Hollywood for Asian Americans, as you know, everything is reinforced. Everything you see in culture, jobs, education, art, it's reinforced by the system of white supremacy. So when you look at Hollywood and you go, oh, all the stories are told by white guys. They want us to behave in the way that white guys want us to behave in their stories. We serve them. I'm the waiter, I'm the houseboy, or I'm the villain, you know, I'm the threat. And that rings true for every minority. You see that in every person of color, whether you're Native American, indigenous person, Black, Spanish, you're gonna have the servant stereotype or the threatening stereotype. And so as a person of color, you go, ooh, which one should I be? Or I don't wanna be the threatening one, maybe I'll be the servant. You know, it's safer to be the servant, right? So, you know, that stuff pisses you off, right, after a while. So you have to learn how to live with that pain. You know, I found art was a great way to channel that stuff out and still, you know, enjoy life. So when I became an actor, I was lucky that things started to change a little bit. You know, in theater, it was better. But when I first became an actor in the 90s, there was nothing in TV or film that a Chinese man like me could have done at that time. I had long hair, I was a rocker, you know, and I had tattoos, and it was like, there was nothing in Hollywood.
You were
written
into
for me.
punk rock at that point.
Yeah, I was punk rock.
Yeah,
Yeah. I was a band. You know, we toured. We released CDs, or back then it was cassette tapes.
Yeah.
You know, so
Good days.
Yeah, the good days. I think they're coming back too. The cassettes.
Yeah.
But you know, let's see. Cut a long story short, I couldn't audition for film or TV for a long time. I even stopped acting. You know, and then I had kids, and by the time my kids were old enough, Lost had come out with Daniel Day Kim, and The Better Luck had Tomorrow came out with Justin Lin, and I was getting ready to like act again, but I couldn't do theater because it didn't pay enough, you know. So if I left the house, you know, for my flute making work, I had to pay. So I focused on film, and you know, I was lucky to get cast in the Knick with Steven Soderbergh, and then that, you know, I think people would say, and there you go, that was my start.
And that's actually an interesting too, because I heard you had mentioned that, that you were, I guess it was really undecided whether or not if your character had to have an accent, but then you, again, knowing your history, you're like, well, he's an American. If you think about it, you know, does he really need the accent? And then there was other things that also contributed to your real life experiences where you don't really, because you told a fascinating story, or what I want you to share with these guys. I'm not sure if they're aware of this here, with your martial arts background, which you didn't really have a lot of it. You had some experience, but it wasn't enough for you to carry on and maintain a fight career, if you will. But with this particular character in the Knick, the fact that this guy didn't know how to fight, that was part of the characteristics of you portraying that, well, just go for it. Just go swing hard, go break through the door, and don't worry about technique because this guy has no technique. Use your experience with that and just go for it. And I think that's something that I think really makes, in my opinion, your performances, especially in those moments right there, make it very, very authentic for me personally. And a lot of it has to do with your knowledge. And I think what you just said right there was brilliant, because that's exactly what I believe. That's what I got from watching your performances, especially learning it after the fact as well. But another thing I wanted to bring up, and I don't mean to drag on to this here, but I wanted to ask you a question about something that I thought was very important, which was the fact that Chinese history. A lot of work these days are coming up with more and more information about Chinese history. Warror being a good example of that. There was a show, I'm not sure if any of you guys were aware of it, it's called Wu Assassins, that came out on Netflix. One particular scene in that show with Byron Man and Iko Uwais, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, where he talks specifically about Chinese history. In that one particular moment, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that scene, but it wasn't. I'm sorry, go on.
I'm not sure which scene you're talking about. I did see the scene about the chicken at the restaurant.
Yes, that's the one where the waitress was like, you know, would you like, it's that same exact scene. That, and what I loved about it, because I knew about the show beforehand, but when on Netflix, they do a brilliant job of just, you know, you click on the video of the film, and it shows a slight preview or a scene. And the first thing they show was that scene. I was like, I got to watch this show. I mean, I was already a fan of Iko's beforehand, especially Byron, because I love his work. But watching that scene really made me more invested, and that an integral part of what this show. I mean, it wasn't just about that particular moment, but there's a lot more to it. But that to me showed me that, okay, people are catching on of the importance of Chinese history, not just being Chinese American history. I think you said it best too. This is American history, and I think events like that, where you see that on television and especially on films, is extremely important, because I think we're all becoming more aware of that more and more, with a lot more people of color who are infusing these stories and showing that this is our history in this country. It's not just about, you know, the white man doing their thing. There's other important things that also have to contribute to that as well too, that are probably even more important than what we just happen to know from our textbook. So, I mean, your experiences with that as well, I think, is one of the key factors that help make the shows and the films that you've been a part of extremely integral, at least for my viewing experience as well. So, which leads me to my next question, because I know I want to give you guys the time to do this here. But when you get a part, whether it be a part for an Asian American or whatever the case may be, if you're looking at a part for something that speaks to you, what exactly do you want to go for first? Are you looking for, okay, what's the history behind the character? Or are you just looking at what's the most interesting thing about the part, let alone the film itself? Like, what's the first thing that comes to mind when someone says, hey, we got an audition for you? What's the first thing that crosses your mind?
First thing that crosses my mind is race. Like, it doesn't matter what this character,
right.
What race this character is. And I'm lucky that these days we don't have to audition for characters that are just simply Asian characters. Although we're removed a little bit. I mean, we're removed, but it's not that far. It's like, you know, I could audition for a doctor, you know, something like that. So it's like not necessarily Asian, but there's a lot of Asian doctor roles on TV, you know. So, but if I look at that, and if there is not a dynamic, a racial dynamic, then I look for the most human element that allows that person to be in the, you know, having that conversation. What is the human element? What is the relationship? Is he like a father? Is he like the brother? Is he like, you know, the caring neighbor? Those very human sort of large character relationships. And I look for that first to see how we're going to relate to this person. And if I can capture something real in that, and how that can apply to my face, you know, because still, I think it's still relatively new to have Asian Americans play non-Asian characters, you know. So if I can find the quicker way in for a generic viewer to go, oh, I believe that guy, you know, I believe him right away. I believe his English is perfect right away, you know. That it's the best thing I can do for Asian Americans, because it's just to show that we can be like anyone else. We don't have to play the roles that you wrote for us.
Awesome. All right. Well, I don't want to take up you guys' time. If you have any questions you want to ask yourselves.
I do want to get back to the first question you asked about. I don't know if I answered it clearly, but in terms of knowing the history and you have to know your history to bring in the authenticity for these roles.
Right.
And that's when I asked Jonathan Tropper of Warror whether he cast me because he knew my work from the Knick, or did he just cast me from the audition? He said, well, I cast you from the audition because you just were convincing, you know, in what I was saying about why the ducks, you know, why I started the hot wave was to prevent the violence of the ducks upon our people. I was convincing. I knew the history that the tongs had to be formed to prevent the lynchings in Chinatown. I just said it but I knew it was true, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what has to happen when you're auditioning and reading for a character. You have to know where they're coming from, some kind of truth that you can dig into. Whether it's the actual truth, doesn't have to be, but it has to be a truth.
Yeah, I think you said that brilliantly. Yeah, and I agree 100% with your approach on that too. I'm sorry, I'm generating more questions that are coming up here.
Go ahead, Rob.
Well, I was just I wanted to bring up something you had just mentioned about this here, which is the fact that you brought up a Warror real quickly. I actually wrote down what fellow actor Henry Yuck had expressed about the show. And I literally had to listen to it 3 different times to make sure I heard it correct, because I did not want to butcher his quote. And this is why I think the show Warror in a nutshell is what he said was on point, which was that he had said about Warror, but the project itself is more than just having a lot of Asian roles. It really digs deeper into the history and the culture that a lot of people aren't aware of. And in some cases, Asian Americans aren't even aware of. So it really shines a very bright light in the history involved in America. I mean, it's simply an Asian American story. I mean, it's simply not an Asian American story. It's an American story because it's about immigrants and the struggles that immigrants have gone through. And it's done in a way that is really provocative, but also very grounded in a lot of actual events and the things that transpired at the time. It's based on fictional writing, but it's also based on historical facts. So that's their foundation. It's not just all kinds of fantasy. And I think it will provide the audience with a history lesson as well as a entertainment vehicle, which it does provide too. And that is his quote. And I think is said perfectly about the show. So with your experience on that as well too, and I'm sure everyone else's experience on working on the show, you have obviously expressed the importance behind that too. But I think that quote right there in a nutshell pretty much encapsulate what the show really is all about. I'm not sure if you want to add on to that, or if with your experience on Henry's, opinions about that as well. Tell me, I'm sure you may want to add to that as well.
Yeah, what rings true right now, that what you just read, is like what a lot of people didn't know about American history. You know, we're seeing right now some incredibly intense racial animus towards Asians right now, Asian Americans and Chinese specifically because of our ex-president, you know, and it's just like out of Warrior, you know, when the mayor is just espousing, racial hatred just to stir up his constituents to vote a certain way. It's exactly what's happening now. Yeah. So if you didn't know that was happening, you do know it was happening now, you know? And the other thing was in season 2, when you have the character Jacob lynched by a mob, how many people know that Chinese were lynched in this country? Just as much, or, you know, but more than Black people percentage-wise, you know? The largest group massacre apparently is the one in LA with 17 Chinese men and boys lynched. You know, that's the largest group lynching in America.
That was also featured in your film, Jade.
Exactly, Jade Pendant.
Yeah.
Right. So that's Chinese. How many people know that history? Yeah. Not a lot, right? So when I was watching them film that scene, oh my God, it was so real. You know, it was like, and it was just like, I am getting, I mean, this job is so incredible because I get to tell the story I've known for so long, but nobody knows. And in the biggest way, you know, on TV, finally, a Hollywood TV show is telling that story, the story that I've always wanted to tell, but never had the audience and the forum for it. So, you know, it's a dream job for that reason. And coming from my sort of political awareness and activism, it's like, it's finally my forum. And it allows other people to learn. And that's why I think Warrior resonates in a certain way. It exposes Americans, you know, racism and roots of hatred, but it's also medicine that we can swallow, right? It's done in such a beautiful artistic way that we can go, oh, I can enjoy this and get a lesson out of this and get taught something.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Rob, for some amazing questions. If you have more, feel free to let me know. But I want to give Francis some
Sorry, Francis.
Oh, nothing to be sorry about, man. I was like,
both of our amazing reviewers.
I was just going to ask, you know, Perry, what's his favorite color? Now I feel inadequate.
Like, red.
You know, no, it was great questions, Rob. Don't, please. And Perry, that was, I mean, you're absolutely right about what you were sharing about, like, we need, like, this is the part that's been kind of swept under the rug for so many years. And now, you know, series like The Warriors is actually, let's put a light into this. This is, it's not pretty. It's very ugly, but it's, you know, but this is what happened. And I think we definitely need to start into that. So I must admit that your character, Father Jun, in The Warrior was absolutely amazing. Now, if there's something that I'm giving away, if I'm asking a question that gives away something, please tell me. I can't answer, and I'll be more than happy to move on. But I just love, like, was the decision to give you, like, you know, a bad eye? You know, I mean, is it? I mean, because it's, you know, when you're a leader of an organization such as that, any perception of weakness is something that can be used against you. But you did not, your character was like, you know, you had that commanding presence from the very beginning. Whose decision was that to give you that busted eye, and how did you play with that?
It was written in the script when I got the sides for the audition earlier. I was I saw 60 to 70-year-old. Okay, I'm not that. Shock of white hair. I'm not that, you know? And so, like, you see that the showrunners, the writers and producers have an idea, an image on who this guy is. And it's a strong image, you know? And you go, okay, I'm not that guy. And I'm not even that old, you know? But and I don't have, I mean, I see what they're going for, you know? But then, you know, when I read the words, it was like, it doesn't matter what his eye is. It does not matter. What matters is what he's saying right now, and that he believes in what he's saying. And everything else is just going to be like, you know, a little detail, you know, because I think most actors would tell you, you don't want to play the details. You know, you can't play those details. You can't act those details. Otherwise, you're a caricature. The details should, you know, be small parts. And if they're the small parts of a real character, they're actually huge. You know, when you're trying to hide something, that thing you're trying to hide is huge. you know. So just don't hide anything. It's just there, and then it's even like, you know, it's incredible. Yeah, but I also give props to the, you know, the people who created the eye and the costumes and the makeup and everything, because those people, and you know, of course the lighting designer, the sets, the cinematographer, the writers, they create the most amazing situation where us actors just walk on, hit the spot, and say the line. You know, it's kind of like they've done it all for you. Just you know, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I really loved your character. So based upon that, do you think, as Father Jun, was he proud of how his son took over the Tong?
I think he wouldn't have had it that way, obviously. But I think that he, in the end, when he saw that it was going to happen, he was just going to go with the flow, you know, because like every, when we're talking about research and authenticity, I had to research on what a real Asian father of that period, how he would have behaved, you know, and you know, a real Asian father of that period would have been a Confucianist. You know, he would have been, it was all about family, right? Confucianism is about behavior of stature of each person towards, you know, the elders. So the young kids had to always obey the parents, and then the parents had to obey the grandparents. You know, there are no convalescent homes in China at the time. You know, the oldest people were the most respectful. So, you know, the harshness that Father Jun raised young Jun with was out of love, right? Because in my old age, this person is going to take care of me. No one else was going to take care of me. My son. That's why those family units were so tight in that Confucianist time. He had to let his son become the man he was going to be, you know, at some point, in order for him to grow. So I think that Father Jun recognizes that and went with his sort of Confucius philosophy.
Right. Because there was that one scene where you were telling young Jun to kill you. And he said no, and I think this kind of solidifies that, or, you know, it reinforces that, you know, during this time, young Jun still recognized that you were his elder, and you know, Father Jun was his elder, and that he wasn't going to just, he knew that your wisdom is still very, 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 very important. So I mean, it's kind of like that. To me, that was a very powerful, but then a shift. But then from the way you're sharing now, from your research, it sounded to me like it's really on par, the way you said it, the way Father Jun said it, and the way young Jun responded to it by keeping you around. Now, clearly, you were not a decrepit old man. You know, you were, because the big riot scene, right? The big riot scene, and you know, young Jun, like, he was looking death in the face. And then Father Jun comes out and starts fighting, and also now you're fighting side by side with your son. So the quick question to this, and I think I already might have gotten the answer from your previous answer, but do you think that Father Jun saved his son, or that he knew that he needed to save himself because it's an all-out riot? It's now, you know, the Chinese versus the ducks kind of stuff, right? So was it more saving yourself, or was it actually saving your son?
Well, I think that the way that it was written, he was saving young Jun. You know, just the way that the scene is written, the young Jun is about to die, so Father Jun appears from nowhere like a superhero.
Right.
But obviously, Father Jun knew what was going on. He knew where he was going to be most useful. Right. You know, and so he saw the fighting. Everybody's hiding out. We see the other characters. We see where Atoy is with Mei Ling and Wang Chao. We know they're held up here. This whole time, where's Father Jun? Right? Then we see suddenly, you know, Father Jun's been watching all of this happen out his window. You know, and by the time his son needs him, he was going to show up. You know, it's still not teaching. Father Jun is still teaching. Even when he challenged him to kill him, it was like, I'm still teaching you. You know.
And then now my last question, and this is completely, I mean, we're really hoping that there's going to be a season 3. You know, and we're really, I'm praying and signing all the petition that I can find out there.
Thank you.
Father Jun leaves at the end, right? Spoiler alert: Father Jun leaves, right? Do you think? I have a hard time accepting that you're just going off to retirement.
Yeah.
I just have a hard time accepting that.
Yeah.
What do you think Father Jun is going to be doing? I know he's not retiring. I just in my bones, I know he's not retiring, but what's he going to be doing?
So, we had a season 3 planned, right? But Cinemax and HBO was what merged with Warner Media. And so in that merging, they decided to cancel all original programming. But there was a season 3 planned. There was a writer's room planned. Things were going to go on. We all expected that we were going to be back in South Africa filming in, 8 months. But we got the news that, Cinemax was sold. And we're like, oh, so that was a shock. Right. So it was planned. And I had a talk with Brad Kane, one of the writers. And he asked, where do you think Father Jun goes? And I went, well, there's a lot of history out there, out of Chinatown. There's a lot of stuff that happened to the Chinese, in Montana, or even farther up in Truckee, all those old, or Marysville, these other little encampments of Chinese who were miners, digging gold. A lot of stuff happened to them we could look at, because maybe Father Jun walks out, gets on a train and goes, I'm going to see America. First time he gets off, he encounters a mining camp of Chinese who are like getting bullied and getting their claim stolen. And there's all those stories of these miners that were massacred and unburied, unmarked graves, And I mean, they're not stories; they're actually historical truths that we just don't know. And nobody was ever, tried or tried guilty. And these people were never brought to court, although we knew who they were. So what happened to Father Jun walked into one of those situations, and he empowers this encampment. He teaches them how to use their shovels to fight back and those kind of things, And so, or there was another one. He goes to Chicago, and there's a Chinatown there, and there are tongs there. What happens there? And maybe they kidnap Father Jun, thinking, Father Jun's alone now. He's no longer the head of the tong, But then maybe the Hopway has to come and rescue him in Chicago, So there were a lot of stuff brewing, and there was a lot of potential. And knowing the brains of the writers in Warrior, it was going to be incredible.
So it sounds to me like they need to be a spin-off. Okay, I mean, just by that virtue alone, there needs to be a spin-off. Father Jun, full throttle kind of stuff. Jun's Revenge or something. I mean, I just think that's just absolutely amazing. That, I mean, your character, as far as screen time is concerned, wasn't that great. But the moments that you were on screen, you spoke absolute volumes. And I'm just glad we're meeting in Zoom, because I think I'd be scared of you if I met you in person. I mean, big fan, huge fan, but I'm like, I'm glad this is Zoom, and because kind of scared. So thank you very much for answering my questions, Perry.
Thank you for asking them, Francis.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Francis. So before we let you go, Perry, again, I really appreciate your time. And I just want to say, for more like in-depth, the type of interview that I usually give, Keith Chow stole my thunder because of your appearance on Southern Fried Asians. So because he's part of the Nerds of Color family, go check out a really great interview with Perry and my brother Keith as he breaks down his history, because I like to relate and learn your story. And that's kind of what I do. So he kind of stole my thunder. And so Perry, thank you for just giving to us at the Nerds of Color and with us right now.
Thank you very much.
But one of the things before I go, one of the reasons I joined the Nerds of Color to talk pop culture nerd stuff was because I am a POC actor, much like yourself, and as a POC actor and with the Nerds of Color, what we also do, which I'm sure you've seen because you're very familiar with a lot of the people on our team, is that activism aspect of it that we do here a lot at the Nerds of Color, because it's that representation completely matters. And as Asians as well, and especially in these current times, how important it is to have Asian pride and to speak with our work with that. And that's one of the things when I fell in love with your work as on Warrior. I became a big Father Jun fan. Then I started researching some of your other stuff, and then looking at your social networking. You are one of those actors, as well as an Asian actor, that's really heavy with the activism, and that means a lot to me as an Asian actor. I recently had Tamlin Tamita on, who everybody knows from Karate Kid Part 2 and Cobra Kai. She's a hero of mine. Got a chance to do an interview with her and tell her how much her work as an Asian actor and activism as an Asian actor to fight exactly what you're fighting and what you spoke out on your social networking, to just let us just be who we are, and in regards to the character. I just want to thank you for that. And if there's anything else, if you could say on that, why is it so important to you to talk on representation as an actor, and when you're in this industry, how that is for you?
Yeah, it's huge. It's a hugely important part of my life. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like, knowing from a child, since childhood, that America really doesn't want you here, but yet I deserve the ticket like everyone else. I deserve the seat. I bought the ticket. Why can't I sit like everyone else? And so you realize you have to take it because they're not giving it to you. And if you don't speak up, you're definitely not going to take it. If you don't tell that person to get off your seat, they're just going to sit there, but you bought the ticket, right? So in terms of being an activist, and you have to find a way to do it where it doesn't, because it's deeply ingrained work, in the soul, and it hurts. Some of this violence we see today hurts, but you have to find a way to process that. And I think my favorite activist, Grace Lee Boggs, a Chinese woman who's passed away, said, this is a lifelong work, so you have to enjoy it. Find something in your life that makes you enjoy it, And she married. She's a Chinese woman who married a black man in the 1940s. Went to Detroit to help the most impoverished black community. She saw that if black people were still suffering, everybody's going to suffer, It's the same with Yuri Kochiyama, the Japanese American woman who befriended Malcolm X. These are two Asian women who saw that the black community is the one that needs to work, because if they're still suffering, everybody's suffering. She went to Detroit and saw that, aside from helping start the Black Liberation Army and the Black Panthers, they were all, somewhat related. She saw that what they really needed was food, There was no supermarkets in downtown Detroit. They only ate at McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I'm ashamed to even have said those corporate names on the show. But so they couldn't get good food to feed their bodies to do the fight. If you can't have the most basic ingredient, good food, how are you going to fight the fight? So she taught them how to plant community gardens in their front yard. So in downtown Detroit now, there's a lot of community gardens in African-American Black communities growing vegetables, because there was no other way that they were going to get it. And then you start to see how racism works, right? We're going to deprive these people of food, good food, nutritious food, not just greasy fried food, So when you see stuff like that, there's, your blood boils, but you have to find a way to help and be compassionate. And I look at Grace Lee Boggs and say, to help someone feed themselves must be an amazing feeling. You hear the old adage about, if you give someone $1, they're going to buy something, but if you teach them how to fish, they're going to fish, So it's like, yeah, just passing on that information, passing on some knowledge on how to take care of yourself. It's like, you take care of each other, So even that one little thing is really important. That's just one aspect of what she did, right? She went and did all this other stuff for racial equity. But, just in terms of what you guys are doing, you're amplifying our voices. That is so important in this time where Asian Americans feel silenced. You have an incredible power of amplifying our voices, and you're part of the fight. It's a major fight, And yes, you guys, deep bows to you guys, for giving us the forum. For giving us the forum. Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. As artists, as actors, we're very empathic people with what's going on in the world. Like, I've cried so many tears these past couple of weeks and months, actually, to be honest with you.
Right.
It just hurts so much. So from an actor to another actor, Asian actor, I thank you so much for using your platform because some of us are afraid to speak out. And then when you get to certain levels, you know, you're afraid of losing endorsements, and sometimes that silence hurts as well. And so for people like you that are in, you know, a certain level of fame, I thank you enough for speaking out and helping us as a community. It means so much.
Absolute pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure and honor.
Yes. Thank you, Perry. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
One more nugget again that from my buddy Keith over at Southern Fried Asians. I want your Texarkana story, your Minari that you talked about. You know, Minari, amazing film. If you haven't seen it, it should win all the awards. Give Stephen Yeun all the awards. But you have a story to tell as well. And Minari kind of helped show you the way that we're looking for it. Again, I second Keith. If you have time, I know you're very busy, please give us that story. I can't wait to see your story because I think it's, again, like you're saying, this American-born Chinese story. Shout out to also Jinling Yang. I don't know if you've read that as a fan. He wrote a book called American-born Chinese.
Oh, yes, I know. I have the book. Right.
It's amazing. I love it.
It is cool. It's so
highly
cool.
recommend.
Graphic novel.
Exactly. Check that out if you haven't seen it. But I want yours. There's all these stories that just shows we are America. We are American. And I just can't thank you enough for your brilliance, your time, and we're definite Perry Young fans over here at the Nerds of Color. Anything new you have coming your way, please. We'd love to highlight it and showcase it. But again, thank you so much, Perry, for your time.
Just one quick thing to say is that the film Boogie with Eddie Huang addresses a lot of all of what we're talking about also. So if anybody is, it might not be out, but you know, we're having a Twitter watch party tomorrow as this goes online. The premieres online tomorrow. Boogie says everything we're talking about also with a Black Asian unity theme, you know, because it's like we need to show that, and Eddie's on top of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be available on streaming tomorrow, on Amazon things? Is that what you mean by that as well?
Yes. I don't know exactly which platforms. I think Boogie the movie has its own streaming, but I think it's going to be released pretty quickly into everything else.
Okay.
Yeah. Super excited to see that. And one of my questions was going to be, did you play ball? But I learned that from your interview with Keith. You used to play ball in school, so it's good to know that you actually have some handles. You know,
I did.
Super excited. Perry, can you tell everybody that's watching? I'll have the information in the description below as well. But for the audio listeners, how they can reach out to you online?
Yes, you know. If you want to watch what I'm doing, just go watch the Knick and Warror, and they're both streaming on HBO Max right now. It'd be awesome if you guys checked in and watched Warror, because once those numbers go up, people are watching. There's a movement for Warror season 3, so I think I want to push on that. But my handle at Instagram is @PerryYoungOfficial. Come and see what I'm doing.
Awesome. Again, Perry, really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, Perry.
Thank you, guys.
All right, boom, there you go, Mr. Perry Young. Another great NOC exclusive interview. Again, if you want to get his history, because y'all know how I do my exclusive interviews here, I kind of go through the history, but shout out to Keith Chow, NOC family, doing a great interview with him over at the Southern Fried Asians. And I think it was perfect because Keith and Perry had very similar life growing up together, both as Southern Fried Asians growing up and then having Chinese restaurants. And so it was great that came from Keith. So shout out to my boy Keith. Check out that interview on our channel. But here we had Rob, my buddy Rob, the movie guy, and big boy Screamador Francis Serrano, who, if you follow the NRW New Release Wednesday, where we do reviews, we broke down Warror season 1 and 2. We had our chance to now speak with Father Jun, guys. And I know, Rob, you did some other research on some of this other film work. What did you think of that cool little interview that we had with Mr. Perry Young?
I found it so fascinating. I wish we had more time with him, to be frank. But I mean, the fact that he gave us his time to answer the questions and answer my long questions, to be honest, he was very patient and very, very polite. And he was also very good at giving us some really some wonderful insight about the history of Chinese American culture and his experiences of going through the emotions. I thought was very fascinating stuff, which is why I was looking forward to this interview, because If you follow his social media accounts, he is a full-on activist, and is speaking for the cause, and is actually going out his way to help bring awareness to this, and hopes to find a solution to all these problems here, because it's not an easy time right now for a lot of people out there. But the fact that they're fighting the good fight, I think that speaks a lot about him personally, and I got nothing but respect for him. I had respect for him prior, but I have way more respect for him learning about his background and learning his activism. So I'm a full supporter of Perry, and any upcoming projects got coming up, I'm down for.
Oh, we're watching it. We're watching it.
Yeah.
We're gonna do everybody. We're all gonna tag team for those reviews as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Snakehead, guys.
Yeah,
you know, he gave us a little bit more juice on that. There was, you know, there wasn't much out there when we were all first planning for this. I'm dying for that now. That just is fascinating. And if we can get a father son that he discussed that short that's gonna go the festival circuit as well. Right. If you guys go look on IMDb, just the cast involved with it and the people behind that, man, if Netflix or Hulu can pick that up as well, that'd be amazeballs. Francis, how about you? You went more Warrior specific.
Right.
What did you feel about some of the convo you had back from Perry on that?
Well, I mean, just to reiterate on how much of an activist Perry Young really is that even the way he approached the character was about activism.
Yep.
You know, he wanted to be authentic with the way he approached the character, the way that he portrayed the character, and that he knew that he had a responsibility to share the story correctly and authentically, you know. And so even the way he approached his research and how he, you know, portrays the characters speaks volumes of the kind of an activist and a kind of man Perry Young is that he knows that there's a story that needed to be told, but still have the artistry into that. You know, so he's using his platform, the platform that he's on, the stage that he's on, to shine a light on things that needed to be, you know, that's been hidden and has been dirty. And I also love the fact that he made a huge shout out to the crew of the Warriors. You know, we're like saying, man, it was the people that designed my eye, the costume, the lighting, the set, the writers. He's like, I just went on my mark and said my lines. You know, well, that shows a lot of his humility as well. And just the way, I mean, when I asked him about how he like, do you think he was proud of the way Young Jun took over? And he said, well, you know, at that time he would be more of a Confucianist. And I'm like, a what? I'm like, I mean, he went philosophy deep to me, man. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So, I mean, yes, just like everybody here, I had respect for him from the very beginning. Now it's in stratosphere level of respect. And yes, we will do a watch party in the next thing he is on. So absolutely.
All right. So Snakehead review coming soon, as well as Boogie. Boogie, his latest film. This recording will actually be coming out a week after what he's, you know, the release of Boogie on digital streaming. So check that out. It's available now. Go see it. And also as well, again, shout out to my buddy Keith Chow, who stole my thunder. Check out our Southern Fried Asians interview where Keith really dove into his background and growing up in history, going into the business. All right, guys, that was a lot of fun, man. Until our Snakehead review, our Boogie review, and everything else that we do over at the NRW, where nerds rule the world, and New Release Wednesday. Thank you all for joining me over here at the NOC, because we are nerds of color. So welcome to the NOC family over here, where I handle business. So before we let them go, let them know how they can reach out to us. Rob, the movie, I'm gonna toss it to you. Let them know how they can reach out to you.
Well, you can follow me on my social media accounts on Twitter, RobMedina0585, on Instagram, Rob_Medina0585, and on Facebook, simply just Rob the Movie Guy.
Yes. Francis.
And you can find me on Instagram and on Twitter as Big Boy Escrimador. And of course, you can follow my Filipino martial arts school page at FMA School on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Francis. I am Kuya P. You can follow me at Strain Since 1977 and at Temple Far East, and obviously here at the Nerds of Color. And again, where you can find both Rob and Francis doing a lot of reviews. We have at the NRW and at New Release Wednesday, where nerds rule the world. And of course, here on the Nerds of Color, where I talk about Filipino Filipino representation throughout all various fields of entertainment and industry. Where I first met Mr. Big Boy Screamador. Check out Showpow Show. That's SHOPOWSHO. And learn all about that. But we thank y'all for joining us. This is the NOC, the Nerds of Color. Kuya P, Rob the Movie Guy, Francis, and we're out of here.
Deuces.
Out.
Hi, this is Perry Young, and I'll be appearing on Nerds of Color. I'm looking forward to you all checking out the episode. And you can catch me on television on The Knick, directed by Steven Soderbergh, and Warror, based on the original writings of Bruce Lee, produced by his daughter Shannon Lee. Both shows are streaming on HBO Max. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at Perry Young Official to see what else I'm up to. Being a nerd of color, to me, means we see the world through a different lens. One that allows the full spectrum of the prism to saturate our senses. There's simply more line, more color, more story, more sound. We don't have to turn up the bass. It's already booming. That is a nerd of color.